In the bustling city of Lagos, where skyscrapers touched the clouds and luxury cars glided past crowded markets, lived a man named Chief Adebayo. He had built his fortune from nothing, starting with one small truck delivering goods across dusty roads, until his company grew into fleets of vehicles that supplied half the nation. Now in his late 60s, Chief Adebayo possessed more money than most could count, yet his greatest treasure remained his only son, Olumide. At 33, Olumide was handsome, educated abroad, and already running parts of the family business with quiet confidence. But his father noticed something troubling. Every woman who approached Olumide smiled too brightly at the shine of his watches, the height of his towers, and the ease of his life. They spoke sweet words, yet their eyes always lingered on what his wallet could buy, never on the gentle man behind it. Chief Adebayo worried deeply. He had seen too many unions built on gold crumble when the shine faded. He wanted a daughter-in-law who would stand by his son through storms, not just sunny days filled with shopping and parties. One quiet evening, as father and son sat on the wide veranda overlooking the city lights, Chief Adebayo made up his mind. He would find a way to test the hearts drawn to his son, by removing the glittering mask of wealth entirely. The very next week, Chief Adebayo called Olumide into his study. "My son," he said calmly, "I have watched how people treat you, and I fear they see only the surface. To protect your future, I will become someone else for a while. I will dress as a simple driver, worn clothes, an old car, and offer my services humbly around the city. You will continue your life as usual, but I will watch closely who approaches you, and why. If a woman shows kindness to a poor driver who serves you, perhaps she has the heart we seek. If she turns away or demands more, her true colors will show." Olumide listened in surprise, then nodded slowly. He trusted his father's wisdom, forged through years of hard work and keen observation. Soon after, Chief Adebayo traded his tailored suits for a faded shirt and cap, parked his sleek Mercedes, and drove an old, rattling taxi instead. He began picking up passengers near Olumide's office, the family estate, and the places where young people gathered. Word spread quietly that a polite older driver named Baba Tunde was reliable and never overcharged. No one suspected the truth. And so the test began. Baba Tunde, as Chief Adebayo now called himself, quickly became a familiar face on the busy streets. His old yellow taxi, patched in places and missing a hubcap, rattled faithfully from morning till dusk. He greeted every passenger with the same warm nod and soft voice, asking after their day as though each ride mattered deeply. He never complained about traffic, never haggled over fares, and when someone was short of cash, he often waved it away with a gentle, "Next time, my sister," or "God will provide." Word spread among office workers, market women, and students that there was a driver who listened more than he spoke, who carried heavy bags without being asked, and whose quiet dignity made even the longest journey feel lighter. Meanwhile,
The projections
Olumide
are lower
went
than
about
we
his usual
anticipated, Chief.
routine,
I'm
attending
concerned about the
meetings in
market
glass-walled
volatility.
boardrooms,
Remain
dining
focused.
at elegant restaurants, driving his polished black SUV. Yet now, whenever he needed a lift or simply wanted to observe, he would quietly signal for Baba Tunde's taxi instead of calling his private chauffeur. Father and son exchanged only the smallest glances in the rearview mirror, a silent understanding passing between them. Day after day, young women noticed Olumide. Some waved boldly from sidewalks, others sent messages through mutual friends, but few paid any real attention to the humble driver who opened doors for them or waited patiently in the rain. One humid afternoon, as the city simmered under a heavy sky, a young woman named Amora stepped out of a crowded boutique near Victoria Island. She wore a simple but well-chosen dress, her hair neatly braided, and carried a modest shopping bag. Olumide had just finished a long meeting and was waiting near the curb when she approached the old taxi instead of the line of newer rides waiting nearby. "Good afternoon, Baba," she said politely, sliding into the back seat beside Olumide, who had already taken the front passenger spot as though it were the most natural thing. She greeted both men with easy respect, then turned to Baba Tunde. "Please, sir, take me to Ikeja. I'm visiting my mother in the hospital. She's been there 3 weeks, and the fare is high these days, but I must go." Baba Tunde nodded without hesitation and started the engine. During the ride, Amora spoke little at first, but when Olimide asked gently about her mother's illness, her voice softened with worry. She described the medicines that cost more than she earned in a month, the long hours she worked as a school teacher to cover them, and how she sometimes skipped meals so her mother could eat better. She never once glanced at Olimide's expensive watch or asked what he did for a living. Instead, she turned to Baba Tunde and said quietly, "You drive this old car every day in this heat, yet you still smile. That takes strength. May God bless your hands on the wheel." Olimide felt something stir inside him, something he had not felt in a long time. Baba Tunde, eyes fixed on the road, simply answered, "It is the heart that carries the load, my daughter, not the car." The ride continued in thoughtful silence, the city noise fading into the background as three strangers shared a small, honest moment. Over the following weeks, Baba Tunde's taxi became a quiet stage for many small dramas. Some women who recognized Olimide from social events climbed in eagerly when they saw him beside the humble driver, then spent the ride dropping hints about fancy dinners, overseas trips, or the latest designer bags they needed. They barely glanced at Baba Tunde except to complain about the worn seats or the slow speed of the old car. One evening, a stylish young woman named Kayoma slid into the back seat after spotting Olimide waiting at a popular cafe. She greeted him with a dazzling smile, then immediately launched into a story about how her phone had just broken and she was desperate for the newest model. When Baba Tunde politely asked if she was comfortable, she waved him off with a quick, "Just drive faster, Baba, we're in a hurry," without ever meeting his eyes. Olimide remained silent, watching through the mirror as his father's shoulders stayed steady and kind. By the time they reached her destination, Kayama had already asked Olimide 3 times if he could help with the phone cost, never once thanking the driver who had carried her safely through Lagos traffic. As she stepped out, she tossed a careless "Bye, driver" over her shoulder. Baba Tunde simply nodded, started the engine again, and drove on without a word of complaint. Olimide felt a quiet ache in his chest. He had hoped, against hope, that someone might see beyond the surface. Then came the day that shifted everything. Heavy rain pounded the city, turning streets into shallow rivers and forcing most cars to crawl. Baba Tunde pulled up outside a small community library where Olimide had gone to meet a business contact. Amora appeared again, this time soaked from the downpour, clutching a plastic bag tightly to her chest to protect a stack of borrowed books for her students. She hesitated when she saw the old taxi already occupied by Olimide, but Baba Tunde leaned out the window and called gently, "Come in, my daughter, before you catch cold." She climbed in gratefully, water dripping from her umbrella. Instead of complaining about the wet seats or the delay, she turned to Baba Tunde first. "Thank you, Baba. You always appear when the day feels heaviest." During the ride, she opened the plastic bag and pulled out a small, neatly wrapped parcel, leftover jollof rice she had saved from her lunch. "I know drivers work long hours without eating properly," she said shyly, offering it to him. "Please take this. It's not much, but it's warm." Baba Tunde accepted it with both hands, his voice thick with quiet emotion. "God sees every kindness, Amora. This is more than enough." Olimide watched in silence as she then spoke to him, not about his wealth or status, but about a pupil who had finally learned to read, her eyes bright with real joy. For the first time in years, Olimide felt seen. Not the rain had long stopped, but the memory of that wet afternoon lingered like the scent of damp earth after a storm. Baba Tunde now made small day tours on purpose, passing the hospital where Amora's mother lay recovering, stopping briefly at the community library when he knew she would be there returning books or preparing lessons. Each time, Amora greeted him first with genuine warmth, asking after his health, his family he never spoke much about, and whether the old taxi was treating him kindly. She never once asked Olumide for anything, not a ride upgrade, not a favor, not even the smallest hint of expectation. Instead, she shared stories, how one of her pupils had drawn a picture of the yellow taxi because Baba drives like he cares about every passenger, or how her mother's fever had finally broken after weeks of worry. Olumide found himself looking forward to these quiet rides more than his boardroom meetings or evening events. He began speaking more freely too, not about deals or investments, but about the simple things, the way the city lights reflected on wet roads at night, the laughter of children playing football in narrow alleys, the peace he sometimes felt just watching people live their ordinary lives. Baba Tunde listened to both of them without interrupting, his hands steady on the wheel, a faint smile hidden beneath his cap. He saw what was growing between them, not rushed or flashy, but slow and steady, like roots finding their way through hard soil toward water. One Saturday morning, under a clear blue sky that made the city feel almost gentle, Olumide asked Baba Tunde to drive him to the market near Amora's neighborhood. He had no meeting, no urgent errand, just a sudden wish to walk among the stalls, smell roasted plantain and fresh yam, hear the calls of traders. As they pulled up, Amora appeared unexpectedly, balancing a heavy basket of vegetables on her head while helping an elderly woman carry her load. She spotted the familiar yellow taxi and waved happily. "Baba Tunde. And good morning to you too," she added to Olumide with easy kindness. Without thinking, Olumide stepped out to help lift the woman's bags into another vehicle. Amora watched him for a moment, then smiled softly. "You have good hands for helping, even when no one is watching." Later, as they all stood together under the shade of a mango tree, sharing a small bunch of bananas Amora insisted they take, Baba Tunde spoke for the first time about the test he had set in motion. "Not everything, just enough. My daughter," he said to Amora, "some people shine brightest when the lights are turned off. You have shown me that your heart carries its own light." Amora looked puzzled but touched, while Olumide felt his throat tighten with something close to gratitude. The market buzzed around them, horns, laughter, bargaining voices. But in that small circle of three, a different kind of understanding was taking root, deeper than money could ever reach as a billionaire's son, but as a man who could share in someone else's small victories. The rain drummed steadily on the roof, but inside the old taxi, the air felt suddenly lighter, warmer, and full of unspoken possibility. The test had run its course, not with grand announcements or dramatic reveals, but with the quiet certainty that comes when truth finally settles like dust after a long wind. One golden evening, Chief Adebayo invited Amora to the family compound, not as a guest of Olumide's wealth, but as someone Baba Tunde wished to honor. She arrived in her usual simple attire, carrying a small basket of fresh fruits from the market as thanks for all the rides. When the tall gates opened and she stepped into the wide courtyard lined with flowering frangipani, her eyes widened at the sight of the elegant house she had only glimpsed from the street in passing. Olumide waited beside his father, now dressed once more in his familiar agbada, the cap removed, the humble driver's shirt folded away. Amora stopped short, confusion flickering across her face, then understanding dawned slowly, like sunrise over the lagoon. Chief Adebayo spoke first, his voice steady and warm. "My daughter, I have been Baba Tunde these many weeks. I drove that old taxi to see who would look at my son with the eyes of the heart, not the eyes of the purse. You never once asked for more than a safe journey. You shared what little you had, food, kindness, stories of hope. You saw the man, not the money. That is the wife a father dreams of for his only son." Amora stood silent for a long moment, tears gathering but not falling. Then she turned to Olumide and said softly, "I thought I was riding with two good men. Now I see I was right. Olympide stepped forward, took her hand gently, and for the first time spoke without any mask between them. I have waited years to meet someone who chooses kindness over convenience. I choose you, Amora, if you will choose me. In time, the old yellow taxi was restored and kept in a quiet corner of the compound, a reminder that the greatest journeys sometimes begin in worn seats and humble wheels. Amora's mother recovered fully, and the family welcomed her as their own. Olympide and Amora built a life together, not one defined by towers or fleets of cars, but by shared mornings, helping hands, and laughter that echoed through ordinary days. Chief Adebayo watched them often from the veranda, a peaceful smile on his face, knowing he had not just found a daughter-in-law, but had taught his son the oldest lesson of the land. The heart that gives without expecting return is the one worth treasuring forever. Think for a moment about the people who cross your path each day, the driver, the vendor, the quiet neighbor. Who do you truly see? What would change if, just for a while, the masks of money, title, or appearance fell away? Perhaps the greatest wisdom is not in possessing much, but in learning to recognize and choose the light that shines from within another person, steady and true, no matter the circumstances. May we all grow eyes that look deeper, and hearts brave enough to value what truly matters. This story reminds us that the poorest person with integrity is richer than the wealthiest one ruled by selfishness.